Hello, everybody, and welcome to another The Builders. Today, we are joined by Aleksandar Svetski. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, buddy. Appreciate it.
And I have permission to call him Alex. So going forward. Yeah, Alex. Sometimes it's easier for me to just kind of throw it to you right away, and if you want to take a minute or two, just kind of explain what you do in the world, what your business is. If you're obviously an entrepreneur, you're doing fun stuff in the world, I would imagine. So if you can just kind of explain that for a minute or two,
Yeah,
and
sure.
then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so most people probably who do know me online in some capacity know me for more of my writing, actually. Even though I've been an entrepreneur for most of my life, I gained a bit of notoriety online over sort of 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, those years, because I did a bunch of writing for Bitcoin Magazine and for Zero Hedge, in a sort of like economic, political, Bitcoin sort of angle. I think when I say a bunch of writing was a lot. Like I think I published probably a million or million and a half words across both of those platforms. So I
Wow.
wrote a shitload of blogs. Yeah, I was one of the most affluent writers. So, sorry, affluent's not the right word. What's the word where you do a lot? Proliferated, something like that. Anyway, prolific.
Prolific.
That's but what I actually do with most of my time, so writing was always a part-time vocation. What I actually do with most of my time is build stuff. So I dropped out of university. I was a civil engineer, and I felt like everybody around me was an idiot. So I took my scholarship money and I put it on the stock market, made a bunch of money, thought I was a genius, then lost everything. And that put me sort of on the journey towards entrepreneurialism. So my first company was a sales company, was quite successful. Then my business partner stole the money from the account, disappeared. So then I started another company that was in renewable energy. I did solar panels, all that kind of stuff, and once again made quite a bit of money out of that. I made my first million when I was 23. Then I got rug pulled with the government rebates, so we ended up losing a stupid amount of money, and the business went under thanks to how the government rebates were structured in the country. And we can go into details there, but that gave me my first like real kind of skepticism and disdain for the government. Thereafter, I got into hospitality, had some successes and failures there. I'll never ever do hospitality again. It's way too hard. The juice is not worth the squeeze.
No, you were doing what, like restaurants and
Yeah, we had a bunch of health food cafes, frozen yogurt stores, stuff like that. And even though they were like lower complexity than what a normal restaurant or something would be, it was just, man, like you're dealing with annoying customers, with annoying landlords, with annoying health inspectors, with food deliveries always late, with transient staff. Like all of the variables are just like really fucking bad. Like there is you can make money in hospitality, but it's, in my opinion, it's sort of like a power law distribution. I think 1% of the people make all the money, the other 99% sort of like struggle through. So for me, I'm not that good in that space to be able to do that. So I wanted to then move into where there's other power law distribution. So I went to tech, built my first little startup, which was a payroll automation app. It was a total learning experience, and I just sold it to someone like for a small amount of money because it was just like a first attempt at building something. So it wasn't really like I got back the money I spent making it. And then the second one was the first time I raised some money. That was like a recruitment automation app. So it was kind of like Tinder for jobs, but using personality profiling. So then people, if the candidate and the employer both swipe right, they could connect,
oh, nice,
communicate, and everything like that. It was a really cool idea, and this was 2014 actually.
Wow.
But yeah, it didn't succeed because we were young, we didn't have enough money. Two-sided marketplaces are really hard, and particularly in Australia, there's one primary job board. I think in the US, you guys have like Indeed or something that is like the main player. In Australia, it's seek.com. And like anyone who's ever come to Australia to try and compete with Seek has been crushed. Even Indeed got absolutely crushed. Like, so to give you an idea, Seek owns 93% of the job ad marketplace in Australia. So
Wow.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So anyway, we tried to compete there. Obviously, didn't go anywhere. So yeah, that wrapped up, and then that's what led me to Bitcoin. And then I went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. That's where I started doing a bit of writing, and very quickly I realized that, hey, people are misinterpreting what Bitcoin is. They're treating it like a trading tool, or they're treating it like a stock, when in reality Bitcoin is a savings instrument. So that's where I built what I would probably consider my most successful entrepreneurial venture, which was the world's first Bitcoin savings app. So just you link your bank account and you save Bitcoin on a regular basis. So you could, people kind of viewed it as an investment, but it was a savings app. So the idea is to slowly move out of fiat and into Bitcoin. And we were the first in the world to do that. And now there's like 50 of those same apps in jurisdictions all around the world: America, Europe, Asia, and South America, everywhere. So we sort of like pioneered that space, and particularly being Bitcoin only. So yeah, man, I left that in 2022. This is a really long 2 minutes. I left that in
No, it's okay.
2022.
Well, actually, we just skipped because I was just going to have you just talk about what you did today, and I'm like, okay, we'll just go right into the story, and I'm good with that.
There we go.
Just go with the flow. All good.
So yeah, 2022 to 24, I decided to write a couple books. So I wrote the Uncommunist Manifesto, which is the book here in the back, and then I published my magnum opus, which was called The Bushido of Bitcoin, which is not so much a Bitcoin book. It was more a book about asking the question of, like, if the socioeconomic substrate of the world is going to change, what happens then, and who do the people who have all the Bitcoin, who do they become? Do they become the next parasitic class? Do they become a bunch of degenerates, or do they become men and women of virtue? And so it's a book on sort of philosophy, and I sort of draw from ancient cultures like the Romans, the Greeks, also the medieval, the Christian era, the Japanese samurai, and all that sort of stuff. So that's a much different book. And 2024, my entrepreneurial itch came back, so I started building another product called Atlantis, which we can get into later. But yeah, that's a bit of a history. Writing, building. That's my thing. That's my shtick.
Man, you are a fascinating guy. I can tell you think a lot.
Yeah.
You think a lot. You have a lot of ideas. And also, I'm kind of circling back at everything you just talked about. Like, you kind of have that kind of classic entrepreneurial experience. We've had a lot of up and downs, a lot of lessons, and you've tried. You put yourself out there. You just tackle a lot of different things. Like, what was one of the, besides what you're doing today? Like, what was one of your favorite ventures out of all those? Like, what did you learn the most from, or what did you have the most fun with?
Oh man, really good question. So, it's sort of like when people ask me what my favorite city is, because I've been to like 50 cities, and it's a hard question to answer,
Right.
because every one of them is different for different reasons. What I will say is that first sales company that I had with that friend who ended up stealing half the money and running away.
Yeah.
It was a special experience, man, because he and I were we were, I think, 5-6 years difference in age. He was a bit older than me, but man, during the good times, we were both like crazy driven. We were both like gun salespeople. We could sell fucking ice to an Eskimo, that like classic, like we were just machines. And it was a lot of fun. Like, we built up this office. We had no idea what we were doing. We were kids. We were dumb as shit, right? And we just we hired a bunch of people, and it was all commission based. So like, the business structure was low risk. But obviously we still had to pay rent and this and that. And like, we went from the two of us selling to we must have had 40 people within like a couple months. It was like, and we were in these it was in the early days of co-working spaces, because we're talking, what is this now, 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. So co-working, like WeWork hadn't launched yet, so it was still kind of like early in that space. And this co-working space that we were in, it was quiet. Like all the other businesses were kind of like, an engineer, working outside of house or something, stuff like that. And we had this like fucking ruckus going on, and we would hire out the boardroom every day for meetings and all this sort of shit. It was wild. So I learned a lot about sales, about really, like, I became a very good speaker, and call it people motivator. Like I was able to get people like really inspired by stuff and to go out there and sell shit basically.
Yeah.
So that was a really unique experience. It's certainly not the one that taught me the most, but
Mm.
certainly like a special moment in my life. The one that probably taught me the most. I mean, other than Amber, which was the Bitcoin app, I think the for me what was more formative was the recruitment app because I'd never really done tech properly. Even though I did that little the payroll automation app for a little bit,
Mm.
that wasn't really a real business. I was a one man show. I hired some freelancers and we built some stuff, right? Like the recruitment app was the first time I actually raised money, dealt with a board, proper hiring, recruitment, figuring it out, product ownership, processes, dealing with develop like all of the myriad of things that you need to do. And it was, I remember my Bible at the time was basically, what do you call it? The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, right? Like that was my book. I
Oh
would
yeah, yeah,
read that all the time.
yeah.
And I felt like I was living that out, but in my own sort of micro way. So that certainly, I think, was the most formative experience because it was the most, yeah, I think it opened the door for me to become what I would consider like an actual technology entrepreneur. I learned that craft there, and since then I've been able to carry that forward with me.
Nice. So you had dropped out of school. Did you take any like business? Like where do you get your business acumen from?
Uh,
And just or did
no,
you just learn on the fly as you were building stuff?
learn on the fly, man. So I was, as I said, studying civil engineering. So I was really good at math and physics and science and all of that, and I blitzed school. Like the other kids hated me because I was always like causing trouble or never turning up to class and everything like that. But I just like ran rings around them,
Right.
and I I I made a bet with this guy at university when I first went there. I said in the first year, I said I'm not going to buy textbooks, but I'm still going to ace the test and I'm going to kick your ass. He's like, yeah, whatever. So I instead of buying like because I got a scholarship for civil engineering, so instead of buying the textbooks, I just put my money on the stock market. So in my spare time, while all these kids were studying, I was actually trading the market, and I turned $3,000 or $4,000. I turned it into 50 grand. Like I thought, okay, I'm a genius, Warren Buffett. Watch out, I'm coming for
Yep.
you.
Yep.
and
Yeah.
and I built my little spreadsheets, and I extrapolated forward. I was like, holy shit, I'm going to be a billionaire by the time I'm 28. Um, and yeah, obviously all of that failed. The only thing I succeeded in there was I actually aced the exams, so I did well there. But
Nice. Yeah.
I did not end up with any money. I ended up even like so. This was probably where I was really lacking is that I didn't have any depth perception when it came to risk. So I levered up. I got margin calls. I did a bunch of shit, and I ended up $250,000 in debt at the beginning of my 20s. So like I was backwards. And to answer your question, like I learnt business, quote unquote, not because I wanted to or because I had to. I couldn't do anything else on short notice. So I had to figure out how to
Right.
make money and pay for
Right.
things.
Right. You couldn't just go work at McDonald's or something
Correct.
and make the money you need. But
Yeah.
I find it fascinating. Like, um, man, I mean, do you think some of it? Because I've had businesses over the years, and even my recent business or my current business, where there's times I feel like I am the king of the world. I've figured it all out. Like we're doing so well that this is I I know it all now. I've made it. And then business has other ideas. It says, no, you haven't learned this lesson yet. Let me just throw that one at you.
Hmm.
How'd that make you feel like when you first like that you lost your big the all that money in the beginning? You like you made 50, you're on a roll, you think you got this figured out, you're next Warren Buffett, and then you get knocked down. What was that like for you? Were you crushed? Were you hiding in a room somewhere and crying your eyes out, or were you a fighter and you were just like, this isn't going to stop me. I'm going to pick myself up, dust myself off, and
I
curious.
mean, yeah, I'd be lying if I said that it was only the fighter thing. Obviously, the fighter thing exists because
Mhm.
every time. I've been knocked down, I've gotten back up, and I've had much more failures than I had successes. So that's for sure. That's where it ends. But in the beginning, I'm not much of a crier. I'm not much of a, like I don't sort of wallow in shit too long. If anything, I get pissed off. So I remember when I actually lost
Right.
that money, the first thing I did was I walked around the house. I was like, I can't fucking believe this, and I kicked a hole in the wall, and I was like, oh shit, now I have to pay for that. So that was like I remember that very viscerally because I remember the hole in the wall. Um, so it's more like uh, anger at my stupidity or anger at my inability
Right.
to have like foreseen something that is how my brain functions. But definitely when I the renewable energy one hit me hard. Like that's when I was really sort of down on myself because I'd really 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 worked hard to like
Mhm.
build out this business and everything, and it sort of, I don't want to say no fault of mine because I guess maybe I could have done something to kind of like minimize the downside risk. But basically, to give you a summary of how it worked was we would install a solar system on a person's house that was say worth 12 grand. Our cost of goods and installation, all that sort of stuff was probably 10. So we, had to say like 2 grand margin on that. We would get 50% of that from the customer and 50% from the government. Or, so 6 grand from the customer, 6 grand from the government.
Hmm.
The six would come up front from the customer, obviously. The six from the government was always trailing like 3 to 6 months. So we'd carry this negative cash flow. So on paper we were making money. In reality we were sort of behind. And that was fine. We were always getting paid and all this sort of stuff. And, usually it didn't take 6 months. But then right at the end of it, the government sort of mismanaged the program. Too many people got the rebate, everything. So they cut it off like really short. And they said they would honor all of the systems that were installed after the due date, so long as they were signed up and paid for before the sort of the end date. And we did that. Me and our company and many other companies around the country did that. And then when it came time to be paid out with these renewable energy certificates, everyone got 50 cents on the dollar. So basically, every single job that everyone thought was in profit was actually in a loss. So the whole industry got wiped
Wow.
overnight. And I had at that time, I had started diversifying. Like I'd started to build a gym. I wanted to bring a container of LEDs in from China because LEDs were starting to get big back then. And I was kind of stretched between these things. And then this sort of got like the rug got pulled from under me. So the solar company collapsed. The gym ended up unfinished. I lost the container in China because I was only a 50% deposit down. So I lost all that money. So it was this massive disaster. And we limped along with the gym and kind of like managed to launch it with like no money left over, and like I was working there day night trying to keep it going, but the debt we took on to finish the gym just killed it. So that shut down, and I was like, you know what, fuck this, I'm out of business, I'm done, I'm never touching another business again, because why should I work this hard just to have the idiots around me like ruin it. So anyway,
Yeah. Well,
that
I mean,
was definitely a period of
that's hard because it's something that's out of your control. It's like somebody's doing it to you,
mhm, mhm.
and that really sucks, especially if you've been blood, sweat, and tears working your butt off to build this thing, and you think and you care about it, and you got people to support, like you got teams or whatever, and you're responsible for this thing, but then something comes along, and yeah, and then going through like to turn this into kind of a lesson, because we could there's so many bad things that can happen to us in business, and have, if any of anyone listening to this been in business for any length of time, or if it hasn't, it's going to like how do you get out of that though? Because like in those situations, and I've been in them, where something just destroys you that you didn't see coming. You thought you had everything handled. You thought you knew everything you needed to know, and it just destroys your business. Either puts you out of business, or almost puts you out of business, or you're limping along, like you said, or those type of things, or any other kind of thing that happens. I mean, what is your kind of your process then? You get angry, and I feel that. So I've gotten angry myself, and but then how do you go to others for help? Do you work through it yourself? And kind of what has been your kind of pattern in life? Like what's worked for you to kind of get back on track, not hit the bottle or something, or, or whatever somebody else might do to cope? Because a lot of people are going to hit that low, and I'm just curious how you've gotten it, because you have definitely been in that cycle where you've been knocked out, but you've come back every single time.
Mm. I think it's part psychological. So it's less what I do, it's more how I think. So I I don't believe in victimhood. I'm one of these extremists who also I don't believe in things like depression. I don't, I believe everything is determined by the meaning we place upon it. And what I what I'm very quick to do is reinterpret the meaning that I associate to the event. So my wife always tells me she's got a psychology background. She's like, you are so good at like dissociating, and she goes, it's a positive and a negative, because when we have dramas, like I can dissociate from anything. Like it'll be bombs dropping around me, and I could just sort of like dissociate. So I think I taught myself that over the years, and it became a way that I would cope with whatever failure or something. Like I would dissociate from it. But it doesn't stop at dissociation. There's a dissociation, and then there's a reinterpretation of the meaning associated to it. And then I would move straight into um, building again, figuring out what to build, how to build. And I guess, that's probably one thing. Maybe my life has been a somewhat positive manifestation of a negative thing, which is I have a bit of FOMO, which is like, if I feel like when an opportunity comes or something like that, I've got to jump on it and I've got to go with it. Otherwise, I'm going to miss out. So because there's always opportunities going on around the world,
Mm-hmm.
when something has failed, for example, I'm very quick to, as I said, if I've reinterpreted the meaning, if I've sort of dissociated from it, and there's something else going on, I'll end up jumping straight away onto
Into something
the
else.
next thing, and I'll start building. And that's it. Like I don't wallow in it. I don't spend time thinking, oh, what if this and that. Like I feel like I integrate the lessons somewhat, and then round two, round three, round four, round five, let's go again, and I keep
That's
going.
Oh man, that makes a ton of sense. Actually, that's I feel like that's kind of how I work through things as well. I think like you kind of reframing it, kind of looking at disassociate. Like this happened. Now, like let me step back, look at it, and what lessons can I pull from that? Or even as far as this was meant to happen. So now I'm even better than I was before
Mhm,
because now
mhm,
I have
mhm,
this
mhm,
lesson,
mhm, mhm.
and that's never going to happen again. And that's also the thing. Like, I'm never going to put myself in that position again, or I'm going to ask better questions next time, or whatever the lesson is. And then, like you said, just now, okay, this is where we are. This is the next opportunity. Either how you're going to restructure things or what other opportunity. I love that. That's actually, to me, my simple brain. That makes a lot of sense.
I'm glad.
That's cool. So getting back to kind of okay. So you have a lot of things going on here. I'm also curious about. I'm curious about you. That's the foundation of the first episode you're on. um, I'm curious about the writing, because where does writing come from in all of this? You got the entrepreneurial spirit. You're a builder. You out there, but you and you. I think when you got into Bitcoin, when you started to write about Bitcoin, like why writing?
Yeah. I I began writing at a young age, but never publicly. It was all just sort of like private stuff. I was interested in all sorts of topics. Like I was always interested. Yeah, I was always somewhat political. Economics interested me. Philosophy definitely. Like I would read. I mean, the first one of the earliest books I read was like a philosophy compilation with things from Aristotle, Plato, and all the sort of like the greats throughout history. And I was always drawn to that kind of these big thinkers. So here I am, like a 14, 15-year-old kid at high school, and I'm reading this stuff in the library. It was a bit of an outcast like that, and I would always just take notes on my own sort of laptop. I had this book actually that I started writing when I was like 18 or 19, which was sort of, I called it the Book of Life, and I would write a lesson a day, and the idea was to get to 365 pages. Never made it there because my life sort of derailed, and that's when that was right in the middle of me losing everything on the stock market and stuff like that. So I think I got like 4 or 5 months in before shit blew up. And then I never actually finished that. I totally forgot about that. I should actually try and find that book and see where it is. And it'll be interesting to go back and read what my lessons as an 18-year-old were, right?
Sure.
I'd probably look back and be like, "You idiot! What are you thinking?"
Yeah, I have like notebooks and stuff too from when I was really young, and I have them in a box somewhere. It would be cool to go like, what an idiot.
Yeah. So that was the seeds of the writing, and it wasn't until 2015 where it was right when the recruitment app was failing. I had just like medium.com had just come out. So sort of like easy online blogging. So I just created a Medium account and I started writing on there about like startups and business. And I think I wrote like 5, 6, 7 articles, and they didn't really do well, but they started getting some like presence, and I was like, oh, this is cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started writing a little bit about Bitcoin, and then one of those went viral. And then I found Twitter, and then sort of the rest is history. I started writing more, et cetera, and yeah, it just became a thing that I did on the side, and I was accidentally naturally good at it, not because I planned to be. It was just
nice. Okay. Yeah, and I've always written. I've been writing. I'm a wannabe blogger / writer. I've had so many blogs over the years, usually business blogs, usually entrepreneurial or business or whatever I'm doing at the time. And my blog, I got a blog now, but I write very infrequently. But I find it fascinating though, because some of us, like I remember taking creative writing classes in school, and I always like enjoying writing, and I love writing articles and stuff, and I've written other stuff. But to hear, it was kind of interesting though, because you were talking about you started writing, started writing about entrepreneurial stuff. You probably were writing on random topics, and then Bitcoin took off, and that was another one of those. I feel like I know you already a little bit. Like it was an opportunity. Like this was like, I'm going to follow this. I'm going to follow the views, and people are interested in this. Let me write more about this. And then that scales up from there, which is interesting because you kind of throwing it all out there. You're just talking about whatever you're interested in. And then you landed on Bitcoin. And what was it about Bitcoin that really struck you? I know a little bit about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about that, and what kind of attracted you to that. I mean, I know you've done investing over the years and things like that, and I think you've talked a little bit about how you think about it. But tell us more about that. What and why you started. Yeah.
Fantastic question. So I think I had all the ingredients to really understand Bitcoin quickly, right? So I had been a trader previously, so there was this element of Bitcoin as a trading instrument and all of this. After I lost everything on the stock market, I went down the gold and silver rabbit hole, hard money, Mike Maloney, Doug Casey, all these guys. And I went down a little bit of the Austrian economics rabbit hole. And sort of the premise of Bitcoin is the idea of creating digital gold, digital hard money, basically. And that resonated very quickly. So I understood that component. I had already a distrust from government and sort of the system, from being screwed over on the renewable energy thing, but sort of B, just like I just never trusted those assholes. Like the idea of, a bunch of bureaucrats being able to do anything competently, like is foreign to me. So, there's sort of Bitcoin has like an anti-establishment, anti-state, anti-authoritarian bent. What else? There was the opportunity piece, sort of the idea that this thing is like moving. And then there was also the technology element, because I just sort of had this natural predisposition towards technology. I just built, even though it was a failed tech startup, like I felt like I understood tech more than 99% of people. So And then maybe probably the sixth pillar would be just sort of my engineering mind. So I can see systems quite well. So I like during engineering we studied a little bit of systems theory and stuff like that. So you can understand how complexity in systems work. So these things all together, I think, helped me kind of grok Bitcoin relatively quickly, and I was able to take what was a relatively like esoteric or technical or complex topic and translate it into words or articles, essays that people could really easily digest and understand. And I think being that bridge was what brought me some attention from these articles. I was able to translate it quite well.
Oh, that sounds like that's an important role in that, because it is relatively technical at its core,
I
right?
mean, it's fucking technical. Like the most intelligent cryptographers on the planet, go to work on Bitcoin because that's like where it is. But it's also the most
Right.
simple, basic fucking thing on the planet, which is money that can't be inflated. Like so Bitcoin sort of spans the entire spectrum, and at each stage, there's like a space for a different sort of magnification of the knowledge, right? So if you want to go really, 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 really into the details, you can. If you want to sort of zoom really, really, really far out, you can. And then at different stages, there's people who can kind of act as a link in the chain to translate from a different magnification. So I sort of sat kind of in the middle. I could like I'm not
Or you
entire.
could,
I can't do all the stuff that like Adam Back can do, but I can sort of translate up the scale.
yeah, I guess I don't know enough about it to know how deep it gets. Like, like why
So
does it get deep? Like, what? I guess maybe write that article for us right now, right now on the fly. That first basics, I think a lot of people at this point know generally what it is, but in your words, like, how would you describe it? Like, what is the depth of it? Like, is the depth of it where it lives on a server somehow and how the programming works? And
no, I mean,
then the
like
top of it is just how you invest in it
no, no, no,
or
no, no,
save.
no, not at all. So like the depth of it is like how it functions, like the very nature of how the tech works, like what it is. It doesn't live on a server. Like Bitcoin is more like a think of it. I mean, you're from the US, right?
Yeah,
Just making sure you're not Canadian. So you guys have a
yeah.
constitution, right? So think of Bitcoin instantiated in the form of a program that runs on hundreds of thousands of computers. And this program is in sync every 10 minutes. So that's the sort of the block, the heartbeat. And it's in sync amongst a bunch of nodes. So each computer that runs the program is a node. Anyone can be a node. Every single node is in sync despite none of the nodes knowing each other. So
Oh
it is
wow.
the first time in the history of humanity you've had broad scale consensus around a constitution, around a digital set of rules, um, wherein the participants do not know each other. And for whatever reason, I mean, because it's game theoretically sound, I shouldn't say for whatever reason, but they do not fuck each other over because the economic incentives align in such a way that everyone continuously, for the last 16 years that it's been operating, run the exact same copy of the ledger of the entire chain back to the first transaction and the exact same set of rules. It is fucking profound in that sense. Now, the that's sort of like the depth of the philosophy. Then you got like the depth of the technicals around that, which is the actual the programming language script, the how the very thing functions with like the UTXO sets, like so that we have in normal accounting. We have like debits and credits, and we have account systems where you have a single account with double entry ledgers.
Mhm.
Bitcoin kind of is triple entry ledger keeping, where you have UTXO sets, almost like a piece of change. So imagine like $100 note broken up into a bunch of dollar coins, right? So you have coins instead of a note. And when transactions are made, the entire 100 coins move, the amount that was sent moves to a new address, and then the change goes to another address, and you have like this kind of continual movement of infinite amount of kind of balances that move through the network. So it gets like hyper fucking complex, and for the kind of brains that like can go and have those discussions and mess around with that stuff is like out of this world. Like they're the smartest people on the planet. And it's very hard to sort of get into the weeds there on a conversation like this, because this is
Right.
like 100,000 hours worth of like math and
Right.
cryptography and everything that you would need to sort of go through. Um, but it really is this like phenomenon that there's never been anything like it, and there will never be anything like it. Like it's 0 to 1 moment. And the ramifications that it has, like, so you take all of this stuff of what Bitcoin is and you translate it to what it does. Well, what it does is it offers us a sound economic substrate that no individual or corporation or government or institution on the planet can tamper with. And if you take that, then you actually have something that is like, the reason everybody converged on gold over thousands of years is because you couldn't tamper with the gold.
Mm.
That's why. Like, it wasn't because of anything else. It was because gold is about as immutable as a physical object as you can get.
Right.
And the only way to really tamper with gold is to debase it. So to put shit inside it, right? Which is why everyone tried to do that multiple times. So you've got now Bitcoin, which is like better than gold because it actually cannot be tampered with. And there is also a fixed supply. And the fixed supply isn't just somebody said so, it is because the consensus that I mentioned before. It's because every single program, every single node on the planet runs the exact same copy with the exact same rules. You can't change the amount, because you and I, if we're a node running on the Bitcoin network, I can change the 21 million to 22 million if I want, no problem. But I will be out of sync with the network. So I so what's the word? I pull myself off the network by changing the rules. So it's like it has inbuilt protection, which is anybody can change the rules, but if you do, you are off network because you are no longer in sync with everybody else. You are no longer on the same constitution. So it's sort of, the like Bitcoin's immutability comes from the fact that you cannot get social consensus on anything. Like, try and take 6 people to a fucking restaurant and get them to agree on which restaurant to go
Right.
to. Imagine getting 100,000, or what's probably now more like 500,000 computers to simultaneously agree to change that one variable in the constitution of Bitcoin, and do that in a space of 10 minutes. It's fucking impossible. So like Bitcoin has sort of done all of these things, which has given us a monetary system that cannot be changed, which then gives us the ability to basically rebuild the entire global economic system on something that is immovable and unchangeable. So it's a big deal. And that,
Yeah.
the more I went down that rabbit hole, the more it interested me.
So there's no outside influences, nothing that can, and that no governments, no nothing can do anything to this, to
Yeah,
the
because
value, to the change the rules or anything like that. It is what it is, and it's. So how does help me understand the you said you can't change, you can't add like 21 to 22 million or whatever. Like
yeah,
what is the static value? Is it like having you have a room full of gold that no one can change that. No one can take anything out of it or change it. But how do you get more money in, or is it the value that increases? And
Yeah, so let's tease apart a couple of things here. So the Bitcoin digital constitution has some rules, and one of the rules is that there are 21 million units of Bitcoin. Each unit is divisible to 8 decimal points. So there's 100 million micro units inside of
oh,
Bitcoin. So it's extremely divisible. So unlike, a dollar is divisible to 2 decimal points, so there's 100 cents in a dollar, Bitcoin is divisible to 8 units. So there's 100 million Satoshis, which is the micro unit, inside one Bitcoin. So that's one of the rules. Now, if you are running a node, and anybody can run a node. As I said, you could be a miner, you could just be running like I run a node on my local computer at home because I'm, want to be part of the network. You can, on your node, you can take, because the Bitcoin software is open source, it's just a program, and I could go in there and I could tweak it. I could say, all right, well, I agree with all the other rules in the constitution, 10-minute blocks, blah, 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 but I'm going to make it 23 million coins. And I'm going to make a note that, when these extra million coins get issued, they go to my wallet. I could totally do that. But for that to occur, or for that to be propagated across the network, every single other node has to also agree to that change. Do you think anyone's going to agree? No. So people have tried to change Bitcoin on for the last 10 years, they've tried to change Bitcoin. But every time they do, they create what's called a fork of Bitcoin. So it's a copy, and they are now on a parallel network, and they then have to compete with Bitcoin economically. And the rational thing to do is to just stay on the main Bitcoin, because that's where the economic gravity is, that's where the mass is, that's where the consensus is, and that's where the chain goes all the way back to the first transaction that was ever made. So every time there's a fork that comes, so you can imagine sort of like a line, and then there's all these forks that come off, and there's like a whole branch. All of those forks just die off in time, and there's this one core branch that continues. So that's sort of like it's a very novel approach to security, because traditionally, when people talk about technology and security, it's about hiding the code, putting it behind servers and encryption and all this sort of shit. Bitcoin does completely the opposite. Bitcoin makes the code open source. Anybody can change it. But try and get consensus and coordination amongst everybody who is a Bitcoiner and everyone who runs a Bitcoin node. That's the impossible part. And that's the part that, whoever Satoshi was, whoever founded this thing, understood a lot more than just coding and economics. They understood human nature and psychology, and how social consensus is very hard to do. There's a thing in game theory, they call it the Byzantine generals problem, which is like, how do you get coordination amongst a series of generals who have to, in a coordinated fashion, attack a castle, but they are not they're not able to communicate directly. They have to communicate through intermediaries, and you don't know if the intermediaries are traders or not. And if any one of them does not attack at the same time, they lose. So it's a problem that was never able to be solved in the game theory space. And Satoshi managed to solve it with Bitcoin, because you get coordination amongst parties that don't know each other, that could stab each other in the back, but ultimately converge and get consensus every 10 minutes. So it's an extraordinary like economic, social, game theoretic, mathematical breakthrough. And the application is for money, which money is actually the most contentious technology or product in the world. Like, if you look at it, central banks get to print money out of thin air and enrich themselves, while you and I, like the peasants that we are, have to work for it. We have to trade our time, energy, and effort for it, right? So these pricks can print it out of thin air. And not only do they enrich themselves by doing so, but they actually impoverish us, because they increase
the devalue
Exactly. They devalue all of our money.
Right.
So Bitcoin kind of puts an end to that, not just in the States, but in the entire world. So it's a massive, massive, massive threat to central banking, which is the largest sort of what I would call corrupt, power institution on the planet that there is. So it's a big deal in that sense.
So how is Bit? I got so many questions, but I'm gonna try to pick one avenue. How does it, like, you hear, like, in the news, like, you'll hear just like us randos out here, just the Bitcoin value or dropped or this, and different things are like, how is health wise? Is it in good shape, or is it something that is relatively stable, or it just has these large swings, or just, what does the future look like too?
So this is the second part. So now what we're talking about is the price of Bitcoin. So the price of Bitcoin is going to be volatile, because the price of Bitcoin is simply a measure of how humanity, which is the market, collectively understands Bitcoin. So if you think about, just in this conversation, you and I have a very different understanding of Bitcoin. So I understand it to the degree that I think Bitcoin is probably worth $1 billion a coin. That's what I think its value is. Maybe more, and in fact, I don't even think of Bitcoin in terms of in terms of a value on dollars, because I would never trade Bitcoin for dollars. I think of it in terms of land. I think one Bitcoin is probably worth, I don't know, the half the city of Denver, right? Like that's probably what it's worth. Um, Somebody else who doesn't know Bitcoin and thinks it's a scam or whatever thinks Bitcoin's worth zero. It's like, why would I ever trade anything for Bitcoin? I wouldn't even give you an egg. I wouldn't even give you like, this like strepsil for it. So like that means Bitcoin is valued at anywhere between zero and everything, right? So the midpoint of all of these different valuations from all of the different people in the market is what the price is. And the price today is like $113,000, right? And that's going to continue to fluctuate. And it will fluctuate, but it'll also increase and go up and to the right as more and more and more people slowly understand what Bitcoin is. Because if like the price is simply a reflection of where the global understanding is. 5-10 years ago, the price was 20 grand or 5 grand or whatever it was. And that was a reflection of how many people understood it then. So as more people understand it, more people are willing to trade their toilet paper money issued by the central bank for Bitcoin, because they understand that the guarantee with Bitcoin is a mathematical guarantee. It's not a guarantee given by some institution that can print money at a whim. So as more people understand that more people choose to move their wealth out of dollars and into Bitcoin. And then that dictates simple supply demand. That dictates the price. If there's more demand, the price goes up. If there's less demand, the price goes down. And the beauty with Bitcoin is, I shouldn't say this is the beauty. This is an interesting situation with Bitcoin, is that it has an inelastic supply. So usually with any other product, good or service, like if the demand goes up, I can usually produce more of it. So if like people are buying loads of Teslas, Elon can build more Teslas and sort of meet the demand a little bit and kind of find a new equilibrium. You can't print more Bitcoin ever. You can't make more Bitcoin. So there's a finite supply that, as new thresholds of understanding are unlocked in sort of human psychology and human understanding, it kind of like creates a new pump, right? And then that creates a new floor for Bitcoin, which is why you see Bitcoin has sort of grown in these cycles. There was the cycles of sort of like a couple $100 Bitcoin, couple $1,000 Bitcoin, $10,000 Bitcoin. Now we're in the the next era, which is Bitcoin in the hundreds of thousands. The next era will push it to the millions. The next era will push it to the tens of millions, until the point where nobody will trade you any amount of Bitcoin for any amount of dollars. Like there will come a point where there's just the door will close. We are in a transition between, I call this in my book the interregnum. We're in the transition between the old king, which is the US dollar, and the new king, which is Bitcoin. So during that transition, we can actually trade the two. And there are people out there, I always laugh. It's like there's people out there that are willing to sell you hard money, like perfect hard money, which is Bitcoin, for toilet paper money that central banks can print. Like that is fucking wild to me.
Toilet paper money.
Yeah, that's what I call it, because that's what they do. So that we're in a strange position that people can actually do that. But I don't expect that to last more than 20, 30, 40 years, like somewhere in that range. So, as long as you can buy it, buy as much as you can, because it's almost like picking up gold 5,000 years ago, before everybody clued on that gold was good money. Like when everyone was still using seashells and chickens and, rocks or whatever else they were using as money, before gold was recognized for its properties. Same way, Bitcoin will be recognized for its properties, but instead of taking thousands of years to monetize, Bitcoin will probably take 100 years to do what gold did in that time.
Wow. So like you won't always be able to buy Bitcoin. It'll
Hell no, you'll have to earn it. You'll have to earn it.
You have to earn it
just
or
exactly
whatever,
the way
yeah.
you earn money right now.
Money
so
now.
you'll exactly that's it.
Oh, interesting. So you say, so to conclude here, I mean, you this isn't, Bitcoin's not going away. You see it as something that in 20, 30, 40 years, it actually might become the top currency or top way
It'll
to.
be the global reserve currency. It'll be the global reserve currency. Whether that's 20 years, whether it's 50, whether it's 100, it doesn't matter. Like it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. That's the only variable here is like how long it takes. And Bitcoin is designed to be around for 1,000 years. It is mathematically and thermodynamically secure. Like it operates on physics. It doesn't operate on institutions. So like, if someone tells me that, the US dollar is going to be around in, 200 years, I'll laugh at them. Just like every other old currency died off because governments and institutions change, they decay, they evolve, and technology kills them ultimately. Whereas Bitcoin is this thing that is like, it was born out of technology. So it is going to live for a long, 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 long time. Maybe in 1,000 years, when humans have figured out how to transcend time and space, maybe at that point, we invent a better version of Bitcoin. But until that happens, like Bitcoin is it's a thermodynamic money. So long as the laws of thermodynamics sort of bound us as human beings, this isn't going anywhere.
Yeah. Alex, I feel like I could talk to you all day about this stuff. I've had a very rudimentary understanding, and I feel like just our discussion has already opened my mind to like what more, like this is a big deal that I should be paying more attention to.
Totally.
But we can't talk all day. Let's land on this. First of all, we haven't even talked about what you're doing today or your new projects and all that. But I think I'll just throw this to you. If somebody wants to learn more about what you're doing out there in the world, if you're still writing, or if you've got a website you want them to go to, or to learn more about you or where you hang out,
yeah.
let us know.
I have slowly and systematically started to actually delete my online presence. Since my baby came the other week, I've decided that I want to become more private. So if people do want to find me though, or if they're interested in this, like I would recommend either this. So there's not a lot about Bitcoin in here, but there's enough. The framework around what we discussed, all the socio-political, philosophical things that we discussed, is what this is about. This is a short book, like it's a 1 hour read. And then there's this like giant thing here. This is 530 pages. Like that's, people want to get really into sort of like the interesting parts. That's what I'd recommend. And I think what I'm going to do moving forward is probably just maybe I'll get back into writing some long form stuff. But yeah, man, I've sort of had I've had enough of Twitter and all the fucking noise out there in the world. It's driving me mental. Like there's so much stupidity going on. So like I'm going to slowly start kind of distancing myself. I just deleted my Twitter the other day. 50,000 followers down the toilet. Yeah, I just don't care anymore. Wow. Like I'm done. So next thing to delete will be my LinkedIn once I tie off some loose ends there, and like slowly by slowly, I just don't need it. I just want to build, write, and
be on podcasts.
Value. Yeah, maybe I'll even stop doing podcasts at some stage. I don't know. This is we'll see. 2026, I'll decide what I'm doing. But for now, I'm still here.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, I'm glad. I'm honored that I got a chance to talk to you. You got a fascinating story. You're doing cool things. That's it. We're gonna cut it there.
Appreciate it.
Next time. Thanks, Alex.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Builders Podcast. One more quick note about our sponsors. At Unified Web Design, we're passionate about doing better together, partnering with agencies and businesses to deliver exceptional web design, development, and ongoing support. And UnifiedLabs.ai is where we explore smart, practical ways to integrate AI directly into your website and e-commerce flows. From intelligent chatbots to marketing automation to back-end reporting, all with a strong focus on user experience and making your systems work smarter. If you haven't already, subscribe or follow to stay updated on future episodes. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, sharing it with someone who might benefit helps us grow this amazing community. Until next time, keep building smarter, bolder, and with purpose.